Hi everyone, my name's Danny. I'm one of the board directors for IHA. Today I'm just doing a session on my journey into becoming a board director, why I applied, and some of the things that I've learnt along the way um, to encourage all of you to apply because it's a great thing to do and it's a great position to be in. So at the moment, we don't have any live participants, but I'm hoping that people will watch this video later and you can always ask me any questions that you like. You can email me at danni.iah@gmail.com if you have any questions later. I'm always happy to answer. So I'll start with just why I've been on the board and why I applied for the board. So I applied in 2016 at the end of studying medicine. Originally, I studied a physiotherapy degree in Albury-Wodonga at Charles Sturt, did a lot of rural work placements, and then I went in to study medicine mostly because I wanted to work in rural and remote areas as a physio. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of job opportunities, but they're becoming a lot more prominent now, which is great. But I guess my journey, I always had a love for allied health, and I always wanted to promote allied health within both the allied health sphere as well as through medicine and in the general hospital space. So initially, when I became involved in iHeart in my first year of medicine, so in 2013 that was, I joined iHeart and there was a lot of really, I found it very inspirational. There was a lot of inspirational people involved. We had Craig Dukes and Donna Murray as our CEOs and executive at that time, and they showed really great leadership. And then we also had the amazing board, which you would have met at conferences if you've come along to our conferences and forums. Then you would have met a lot of our board directors, and hopefully you would have come across me at some point as well. So I started coming to IHA forums and conferences the same year, 2013, and I've been every single year since because I just loved it. I love being involved. I got involved in the Indigenous Allied Health Fusion Challenge in that first year as well as a mentor. Because I'd already graduated from physio, so I became involved in as a mentor. And one of the things that I was really passionate about and really wanted to see was more Indigenous allied health professionals. So I really enjoyed connecting with the students and I found them really inspirational. And I just wanted to, I guess, be that leader and show that we can do this and spread the word and get more of us, because I think the more that there are of us, the greater voice that we do have. So I guess from a very early time, I loved being an allied health professional. I loved promoting allied health. I loved seeing more students come behind us because I did have a lot of struggles through studying and in my degree. So in my physio degree, the Indigenous health unit at our uni had the Indigenous education unit at our uni had shut down. So I didn't really have that space that I could go to, that I could meet other Indigenous students. And there was a lot of things that happened in my physio degree. I lost my dad, I lost my uncle. And so I really didn't have that space to connect. I didn't meet any other Indigenous students during the time that I was there. And then I went on to work a year in Sydney. And then I came into medicine in 2013. And as I said before, I joined IHA in that year. I also joined the Australian Indigenous Doctors Association in that year. And I became really well supported from IHA and from our things like our Indigenous Health Unit. And so I found that having more of us and having that collective body and seeing more of us really inspired me, really kept me going. So I really wanted to have that sort of given to other students coming through because I didn't have it through my physio degree. So I guess some of the reasons that I joined is that I found IHA, the people in IHA, really inspirational. The other thing is that the interests were the same. So um, I had interest in growing our workforce. I had interest in seeing more Indigenous allied health professionals. I felt very isolated when I was in my physio degree, and so I kind of felt like if I can encourage more people, then it wouldn't just be on me. Like you could have multiple of us um, promoting Indigenous health and promoting, um, the reducing the negative stereotypes that we aren't educated, or those sort of things. So promoting more successful Indigenous health professionals within this area. So I found that IHA had a very similar interests, very similar values to me. So they wanted to increase the workforce. They wanted to promote Indigenous health. They had a passion for allied health. And then also what was growing at that time was the rural and remote aspect of allied health as well. So that was really exciting. So then during my medical degree, I did, it was kind of actually really by accident. I didn't really try to join committees. I didn't join any committees during my physio degree. And I kind of had an opportunity, being one of the only Indigenous medical students in my year. I kind of got the opportunity. People were just like, oh, you should come on to our rural club and be the Indigenous health officer. And at that time, it was very, very scary. I didn't really know what I could give to that role. I felt like I was a bit of an imposter syndrome, that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't know enough knowledge, one about anything about being on a committee, but also even not enough Indigenous knowledge or community engagement at that time. So I felt very insecure, I guess, and I also struggled through my physio degree, and I wasn't on any committees at that time, so I was very nervous to put on an extra load. But I did. I joined the committee because there was really no one else. And then things kind of just snowballed. Like you learn little bits along the way. I started doing a bit of public speaking through that role and through a couple other roles. So it's kind of snowballed. I ended up being on the Rural Health Club committee for a couple of years. I learned a lot of knowledge. I learned a lot of skills. I learned what it was like to work in a committee, to have finances, to have president, to have secretary. And then I went on to be the Indigenous Health Officer for the National Rural Health, the National NRHSN, National Rural Student Health. Why can I not? Anyway, but the NRHSN, which was a student-run committee focused on rural health and had nursing, allied health, and medicine. So again, had very similar values to me, promoted not just medicine, but promoted allied health and nursing, which I found really important. I wanted to see more allied health students and more nursing students get supported through their placements, and through their things like accommodation, financial support, things like that. So I guess it kind of just snowballed. I gained a lot more skills in that committee as well. So luckily in that committee, we didn't have to worry about finances. That was all run by Rural Health Workforce Australia. But we had to do things like set out a business plan and set out a strategic plan. And so in those things, I learnt more skills. And the other things that happened to me whilst being in that committee is that I had a bit more engagement with government. So I had some work and some roles that were done with politicians and MPs, looking, building relationships with them and getting in their ears. So I learnt some skills doing that sort of stuff, and I had a few media opportunities. So I was able to go on ABC News and Triple J and things like that. So, but all of these things, like 4 years ago, I would have not thought that I could do any of this sort of stuff. So I guess one of the things there's a lot of things that are very useful to be on our board. And given that I was on these committees before, I definitely had built up some skills, and I had some skills. And I guess being on the board for IHA was kind of just, again, just stepping up and being willing to learn more and gain more skills. But it was also due to the people that were on the board at the time. So I had, there was people that were on the board that I really looked up to and really found inspirational, and I really wanted to learn from them. I was already kind of getting some mentorship from them in ways. So taking that next step to the board would just allow me to do things a little bit faster, gain some more skills a little bit faster. So yeah, so that's kind of my lead up to the board. So I guess, look, there's a number of skills that are very relevant to being on the board of IHA. I think things to think about when you're joining a board, any board, but things for particularly for IHA's board, is that you kind of want to know a little bit about the organisation before you're joining. So I was very involved for the 4 years that I was in IHA, and I've already touched on, they had very similar values and very similar things that I really wanted to achieve. But the other things that you should be looking at if you are interested in joining a board is looking at, how the organisation does run. So what is their secretariat like? And ours, we're very lucky because IHA's secretariat is very involved. They're very present at our conferences and forums. They're very personable. We're only a small secretariat, but you can grab any of the IHA staff and you can have a chat with them at any time. I think pretty much everyone in Australia who's Indigenous knows Donna Murray, so we're lucky there. And she's always willing to have a chat with anyone who has an interest in IHA as well. So things to look at is getting involved that way. But looking at some of IHA's policies and paperwork. So things that I did before I joined the board as well is I looked at things like IHA's strategic plan, which I kind of already knew from coming along to a lot of the forums and conferences, but looking at the vision, the statement of intent, the purpose. Do these align with things that you want to achieve as well? Is this something that you can stand up in front of a camera, in front of government, in front of media and say, I represent Indigenous Allied Health Australia and these are my values and these are the things that I stand for? Because even if they don't completely align with your values, if there's policies and procedures or things that we have that don't quite fit what you want to represent as a person, you need to really look at that and question that and see where you fit in. And then, because as soon as you apply or take a position as a board director for Indigenous Allied Health Australia, you are representing Indigenous Allied Health Australia in any sort of public space, any conference that you go to, any representative role that you go to, you are representing us. So you need to make sure that you're standing by IHA's values, you're standing by IHA's policies, that you're reflecting what our organisation represents and what our members want to see. Because at the end of the day, our organisation is our members. We represent our members. And as a board director, our role is really to bring together what the members want in terms of our organisation, put it forward in our business plans, put it forward in our strategic plans. And then it's the job of the secretariat and the company and people like Donna Murray and the staff to then essentially execute what we think is the best interests for our membership. So those are sort of the things to think about if you're going to apply for a board director position. And this goes for any board. And then the other things to sort of consider and think about is what you can bring yourself to the board. So I mentioned a lot of things, like I'd done committee roles and I'd learned a lot along the way. But there's certain things that really help when you are applying for a board position, things that you can bring to the board. And they might not be, so we work for an allied health organisation, but it might not be allied health related. So it might not be stuff that you're bringing from your profession forward, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because as we represent 28 different allied health professions, we can't just think about our own. So I'm not just going to be putting forward what's the best thing for physiotherapists, because that's not the purpose of IHA. The purpose of IHA is to be putting forward the best things for our 28 different allied health professions, for Indigenous health, for the Indigenous health workforce, and how do we improve all of those things. And that all of that is reflected in our strategic plan. So looking at the strategic plan before you apply is another useful thing. So some of the things that, I might just touch on some of the things that we do look for in our board directors, and skills that are useful. So obviously you have to have a qualification in allied health to even apply to nominate for a position of a board director elected at our AGM. We do actually, if you look at our governance charter and our constitution, we do actually have now the ability to elect 2 independent board directors who may not have an allied health background. But if you are to be elected by a membership at an AGM, you need to have an allied health degree, and so that is the first step. If you're looking at applying, you also need to be over 18, and then some of the skills that are then beneficial, but you don't need to have, is so skills in governance. If you don't know what governance is, then you should look it up, or you should email me and we can talk about other things. You can always, do a Google search on what is governance. But looking at, it's kind of all the things that we've already been talking about. So representing the organisation, showing that you have the organisation's interests at heart, and doing those things, but making sure that you have a good understanding of that. When I became a board director in 2000 and end of 2016, we undertook governance training as a board, and we do that every year. So it's not a 100% necessary skill, but you should have a bit of an idea on what governance is. And then the next one, we look at strategic planning. So as I mentioned before, as being on the committee of the NRHSN, every year we would put forward a strategic plan and a business plan, and looking at what is the strategy around moving our organisation forward. You don't have to have skills in this, but it is something you will pick up along the way. But it is something that is useful to have if you're looking at applying for a board role. The other one that I struggle with, but I've learnt heaps in the last 2 years of being a board director, is financial skills and accounting skills. So as it's really important, I think we've got a document online, just looking at my other computer here. We have a document online that talks about being a board director, about the IHA board and board director roles and responsibilities. It's really important to understand that as a board director, you are financially liable for the organisation, and understanding that we have to meet requirements. We get government funding, we have to meet requirements as an organisation, and as part of that we get financial statements every quarter, and we look through the financial statements, and we have to understand that whether we're essentially doing what we're supposed to be doing with our money. It's something that we have a finance and risk committee, so once you apply for the board you can also apply for subcommittees as well. I am not on that committee, but we do financial planning, so you have to have a basic understanding of reading the financial statement. And if you don't know, you ask questions, and I ask questions a lot, and Monica is great at answering some of my questions. But one other thing is you need to know, you need to have a basic understanding of finances. But you don't have to have that when you come in. I didn't have any of that when I came in. We do have some webinars that you can watch and you can listen to, and then if you need extra support, like there's always skills that we're willing to we're always willing to upskill our board. So if there's areas that you need more skills in, if there's areas that you're lacking in, IHA is a really great place to be on a board, because we do upskill our board directors. So I've learnt lots over the last couple of years. But as a minimum, as a board director, you need to understand basic financial statements, cash flow, the projection, and the best things for our organisation. Then other things that are useful is having a relationship with the government or the community. So community engagement and government engagement are very much part of being a board director. We have meetings, we have conferences, we often have politicians at our conferences or at representative places where we're representing IHA. It's good to be able to essentially, this is a skill that pretty much every single allied health professional will have, is communication and building relationships with people, and making sure that, but again, it also comes back to the governance, so making sure that you are representing IHA and not representing yourself and representing your own intentions, but representing the intentions of the organisation. And then also, touching on that as well, it's great to have skills in media. It's great to have skills in public speaking. It's great to have skills, like these are all sort of generalized things. And of course, leadership. Leadership is definitely one thing that you should be, if you're looking at applying for a board, you should be already demonstrating leadership, and you probably already do. And you might not recognize it. I never considered myself a leader the whole way through medicine, and even as a board director, but you probably already have the skills and are already demonstrating leadership if you're even thinking about applying for a board position. So those are sort of some of the skills. And look, I probably had a few of those things, like maybe 2 or 3 of the areas I was like moderately okay in, but definitely finances I didn't know much about, definitely governance I didn't know much about. I was doing it already with the committees that I was on, but I didn't understand the sort of formality of governance. But everything that you can, that we do in our board, all the skills that you need, you can learn. And I've learned definitely a lot along the way, and it shouldn't put you off from applying. Sorry, I'm just reading. I've got some questions to the side. But yeah, it's definitely that you can definitely look at. Those are some of the things that you can look at building. And if you're not quite ready to apply for board position yet, those are some of the things that you can look at building up along the way. So one of the other things that I wanted to touch on today is that you definitely need to think about if you're going to apply for board is the time commitment and the work commitment. So I remember I asked a lot about this when I was thinking about applying. So there's definitely talking to other board directors and finding out what the time commitment is. And it depends on your position on the board. So as I said, you can be on, you can apply for the board, you get onto the board, and you might just do that as your first year or your first 6 months. You might not do any extra committee stuff. There's the finance and risk committee. There's the conference committee, which I'm on. There is also the position of chairperson, which is Nicole Turner, and she's got another webinar that's coming up on I have it here. No, don't have it here. It's going to be advertised in. I think it's in a week or 2 weeks. No, it must be next week. But one of the things is looking at the time commitment. So, as the chairperson, Nicole Turner definitely has the largest amount of time commitment. She essentially is doing IHA all the time. So she has a huge time commitment, and if you want, she'll be doing a webinar next week. So definitely something that she'll probably touch on. But if you wanted to come on to the board and just be a board director and attend the board meetings and promote IHA and do a lot of the stuff that's involved in that, I got told about 2 hours a week is generally what you would be looking at in terms of time commitment. Since being on the board, I wouldn't say that that's entirely accurate. It tends to, so we have 4 board meetings a year. You tend to go through peaks and lulls. So before a board meeting, you will spend a lot of time reading board papers, and it's really, really important to read the board papers before the board meetings, because it means that we get things done on time, and that we can progress through things quite quickly. So before board meetings, I would say I probably put in about 6 to 8 hours in the week prior, just to make sure to read through everything. And then there's some weeks where I'm not doing anything for IHA, so there won't be any time commitment. And then there's other weeks where there's representative roles, so you might be asked to attend a breakfast, or you might be asked to attend a dinner, or a function that's in your area. And these take up a bit of time. Look, 2 hours a week on average is probably realistic in terms of the overall time that you spend, but it is sporadic in terms of it goes up and down, and it's not always the same. And then obviously you have your forum week, which you spend the whole entire week there and involved and reading through board papers, because we have a meeting as well there. There's other things that I do for IHA. So I've been on a couple of committees. So I've been on the Puggy Hunter Scholarship stuff, which I'm doing at the moment. We have to read through about 80 applications. So that takes up a good day for me to do, 2 half days. And then there's other things. There's other scholarship awards and bursary awards and things that you might be asked to do. The committee, the conference committee, takes up time in terms of the awards for that, and looking at things like the venue, promoting the conference, finding sponsorship for the conference. So all of those things that you sort of have to commit to. I guess one of the hard things for me, and something that I didn't really consider, was getting time off for board meetings. So I've been lucky, and I've been able to attend, I think, majority of them, probably 90% of board meetings, or 95%. I think there's only one that I've missed in the last 2 years. But you need to consider your workplace and consider how supportive your workplace will be in terms of time off. So our board meetings, as I said, we have them quarterly. They generally go for 2 to 4 days, and they're here in Canberra, which is lucky for me. They're mostly here in Canberra, not always, but they're mostly here in Canberra, which is lucky for me because I didn't have to also consider travel time. But these are all things like Patty travels from rural remote WA, so she has a day of travel to Perth, and then she's got to travel over. And then she has a few days of meetings, and then she has, a couple of days of travel back. So you have to consider this in terms of being able to make board meetings. So a lot of my annual leave does go to taking time off for board meetings, which is fine because I'm happy to contribute that, but it is definitely something to consider. There's no point in being on a board if you can't commit the time and commit the effort and you're not reading through board papers and you're not, being an active board member, then it's more useful to have someone else in that role. So those are sort of the things that I think are really useful. And look, all of this stuff, I don't know if there's any students that might be watching this video as well, but all of this stuff is also really relevant to applying for the student representative committee. So if you're going to be on that role as well, it's really great because you're learning some of the skills in terms of working with a committee, you know, building rapport, representing an allied health organisation, having, sometimes you get the opportunity to have interactions with government from that position as well. So you're building some of the skills that are relevant to be on a board. But if you're not committed and you're not, involved and replying to emails or replying to meetings or attending meetings, then again, there's no point in applying if you're not going to have the commitment to be on there. So it's also reflective of our student representative committee. So yeah, so those are some of the things, I guess, to consider in being a board director. As I said at the start, I'm very happy to have any questions or any comments, or if you just want to have a chat, you can email me, danni.iha@gmail.com. And if you email me any questions, or if you just want to have a chat, email me and I can give you my number and we can have a chat. Or you can find me on Facebook as well, Danielle Dries, Dries. Always happy to have a chat with anyone who wants to know a bit more about being a board director. Thanks, guys.